Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Fiber for Breakfast. We're now in our 48th episode of 2022, and I hope everyone had a very happy Thanksgiving holiday. It's hard to believe that it will be December tomorrow. Before we kick off, I'd like to thank Nokia, the gold sponsor of Fiber for Breakfast. On Friday, the FCC adopted new rules prohibiting communications equipment deemed to pose an unacceptable risk to national security from being imported or for sale in the U.S. Specifically, this applies to equipment produced by Chinese suppliers such as Huawei and ZTE. These new rules implement the directive in the Secure Equipment Act of 2021, signed into law by President Biden last November. On Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, the FCC adopted an order creating an Affordability Connectivity Program, ACP Transparency Data Collection, which requires all internet service providers to provide their service plans for ACP households, including speed, latency, and bundling characteristics. The intent is for the FCC to determine whether ACP is working as Congress has intended. The FCC needs to know who's participating in ACP and how they're using the benefit. This past year, we had 4 fantastic regional fiber workshops. Most recently, our sold-out event in Columbus, Ohio. These regional events will continue in 2023, and our first regional fiber workshop will be held in Raleigh, North Carolina on Tuesday, February 7th, and we hope that you're able to join us. I know, Mark, that'll be pretty convenient for you. This brings us today's Fiber for Breakfast session with Fiber Broadband Association's board member, Mark Boxer of OFS, and our good friend, WIA's Chief Operating Officer, Tim House, who will be discussing workforce development. The clock is ticking. But before I formally introduce today's guest, I'd like to introduce Trish Ehlers from our team, who's going to walk us through some housekeeping items.
Thanks, Gary, and good morning to everyone who's joined us this morning. Before I go over a few logistical items, I'd like to once again thank our Fiber for Breakfast Gold sponsor, Nokia. Now, if everyone would just keep in mind that you're all in listen mode only. To ask a question, you can just type it into the question box in the control panel on the right side of your screen. We'll host a Q&A session with our panelists at the end of today's webinar. This presentation is being recorded and will be available to members only on FBA's website within 24 hours. You can find the recording in the Events tab under the Fiber for Breakfast drop-down option. At the conclusion of the presentation, you'll be prompted to complete a brief feedback survey. If you'd take a minute to do so, we appreciate your input. I'll pass it back to Gary now to introduce our panelists and get us started. Gary?
Thanks, Trish, and good morning. I'm Gary Bolton, the President and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association. Last week on Fiber for Breakfast, we had a great debate with Grant Jocelyn of the U.S. Telecom Equity Research at Credit Suisse on cable industry's latest efforts in a session titled Fiber Meet DOCSIS 4.0, Cable's Upgrade Path to 10 Gigabits. Today on Fiber for Breakfast, we're going to be hearing from FBA's board member and workforce chair, Mark Boxer of OFS, and our good friend, WIA's COO, Tim House, who will be discussing workforce development. The clock is ticking. Mark is a long-serving member of the Fiber Broadband Association's board of directors and served as the chair for the FBA's Education Committee. He's also chaired the FBA's Technology Committee. In his day job, Mark is a technical manager, solutions and application engineering for OFS. In this role, he assists customers deploying fiber in a wide variety of network design scenarios and analyzes trends in telecommunications market that drives new product innovation. As the chair of FBA's Education Committee, Mark has led the development of FBA's industry-leading Optics Path Fiber Optic Technician training course. Tim House is the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Wireless Infrastructure Association, WIA. He oversees the day-to-day operations of a 35-plus employee trade association and leads teams responsible for workforce development, meetings and events, and membership initiatives. WIA and FBA have formally announced an industry partnership focused on accelerating workforce development and apprenticeship programs to all 56 states and territories, in an effort to fully support NTI's efforts to build out the nation's critical broadband infrastructure to all Americans. So with that, welcome Mark and Tim. And for our audience, please type in your questions as we go for the Q&A at the end. With that, I'll turn things over to Tim, I guess.
Thanks, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here and looking forward to having this discussion about our accomplishments and what we will do together. So I wanted to get started, and certainly Gary and Mark chime in here. What we're seeing, and I don't think this is a surprise to anybody on this call, and certainly is not particular to this industry, to the broadband industry, but there is a skills gap and a workforce crunch. As we'll see over the next several years, there will be increased funding for broadband deployment. In fact, up to 7x of current funding. Yet the workforce is projected to grow only 15% over that time. Something has got to give, as the slide says, and I think it underscores the importance of the partnership that we have together.
So if I could chime in, anecdotally, we hear from our members all the time that that a trained workforce really is very important. We hear in a lot of situations that you'll have people just basically hopscotching from one company to another, and so they continue to go back and forth. But and that's great if you're in the industry and you're working as an installer, then your standard of living is continuing to rise. But ultimately, we have a smaller pool of people, and that happening at the exact same time as we have really historical levels of funding coming in. And the other thing is, if you think about it from a fiber optic standpoint, fiber has been around and kicking for roughly around 40 years. So we're actually seeing a lot of people towards the end of their careers starting to age out. So we really have an opportunity here to help train the next generation of workforce.
Well put, and it underscores again the importance of training and education programs, formal career paths, and workforce development initiatives. As part of BEAD, there is a workforce plan that's due within 270 days of release of planning funds, which should include sector-based partnerships, and there's a model for that which we'll cover a little bit later, but it includes engaging with education and training providers, the public workforce systems, unions and other work organizations, and employers. Registered apprenticeships, pre-apprenticeships, and wraparound services are mentioned as preferences for part of that workforce plan. And the requirement includes equitable on-ramps into broadband-related jobs, tapping into underrepresented populations, ensuring a diverse pool of workers, and includes targeted outreach to those populations that have been underrepresented in broadband and IT. Next slide. As I mentioned at the top, I'm really excited about the partnership that WIA and FBA forged, and I'm grateful for Gary's and Mark's leadership and Debbie Kish, because it will help us to sort of join forces around all of the possible training and education and workforce solutions related to broadband. So what we're going to do under the registered apprenticeship program that WIA administers is collaborate on curriculum, support training and certifications that map to apprenticeships, and assess new and emerging occupations together. In addition, we'll be looking at what's called related technical instruction under existing occupations and collaborate on that, so that there is a well-rounded set of curriculum under each of these occupations that enhances someone's training and formal process through the workforce system. For those of you that aren't exactly aware of apprenticeship, which is, I'm sure, many of you on the call, it's a time-tested, world-renowned, proven system for workforce development. I think what we hear from employers a lot is that there are concerns that it is a step towards some sort of government regulation, or it's apprenticeship is only for the unions. And if I could simplify that and maybe address that concern, what we have found from the employers is that most of them actually have apprenticeship-like systems already in place. You have a mentor and a mentee, a journeyman and a green hand. And apprenticeship is actually just, and registered apprenticeship is just the formalization of those existing systems. There are tremendous benefits to formalizing that. But in doing so, you have an industry-driven, high-quality career pathway that's well articulated, where employers can develop and prepare their workforce, and individuals and employees can obtain paid work experience, get classroom instruction, and a portable, nationally recognized credential. Extremely important as we look to build this workforce now and for the future. Next slide. There are 5 core components of apprenticeship. First is that it is a paid job. It's employment. Apprentices are paid and produce high quality work while they learn skills that enhance their employer's needs. So earn while you learn. Structured on-the-job training. This means you're developing skills through structured learning in a work setting. You're learning from somebody who's been there, who's made the mistakes and can help guide you. There is additional related technical instruction, as I mentioned before, which improves the job-related skills through a classroom setting. There's mentorship. Again, most of our organizations that we've engaged with have this system already in place, but it provides apprenticeships with support of a skilled worker to assist and enhance with this hands-on learning. And then there's a national occupational credential, which offers that portable, nationally recognized industry credential that we talked about, which is issued at the completion of the program. Next slide. Thank you. Tremendous benefits to having a registered apprenticeship program. First, you're developing a skilled workforce. Second is, it is, again, a time-tested, world-renowned system which reduces turnover and improves profitability. And your retention of workers, and there's been even an update to this statistic. It's now 92% of apprentices continue employment after completing an apprenticeship. When we're talking with employers so often, and Mark, again, I know you're engaging with this quite a bit, so weigh in, is one of the sneaky costs that everybody faces is this turnover. We got somebody trained up, they went out and performed really well, and then they took a job with somebody else and went in another direction. Apprenticeship, again, this isn't something that we're trying to pitch. This is the data over many years, is that it assists with retention. At 92% of apprentices continue employment after doing their apprenticeship.
Yeah, one additional benefit that's not included in this that we hear is just having a skilled workforce can result in a much more resilient network. We are continually hearing stories from our members of just workmanship that kind of makes your head, makes you pull out your hair. And so ultimately we want to have a workforce that really knows what they're doing and can install resilient and proper networks. Yeah, back over to you, Tim.
Thank you, and same page on that. Same, and certainly in our industry and with our good friends at PCCA, I know that they've experienced this as well, which is that safety is paramount. High quality work is paramount. And when you have systems in place that help to improve that, you're well on your way. So let's go on to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about a program that WIA administers, which is called the Telecommunications Industry Registered Apprenticeship Program, something that we invested in starting in 2014 and became the national sponsor of in 2017. It's a multi-employer program that now has 79 employer sponsors enrolled. We have more than 3,500 registered apprentices and now 15 occupations. And we look to expand that, and in particular with the input from the Fiber Broadband Association and those of you on this call that can have input into the creation of additional occupations, better understanding the skills needed for existing occupations, looking forward to. I mean, so one of the primary reasons we partnered on this was to be evangelists and advocates for this type of formal workforce development. Next slide. I'm not going to read through, but maybe I'll pull some highlights from the occupational standards currently developed under TIRAP. I'll point out in-building wireless installation technician, broadband technician, overhead utility installer technician, fiber optic technician, and underground utility installer technician. All of these occupations currently exist within the program. We have employers engaged and apprentices currently in those occupations.
Yeah, so just wanted to give an update on the Optic Path course and certification. So we've been working on this for a while, but not everybody on this webinar may be that familiar with it. So we just wanted to give a little introduction to it. So the goal really is to have a trusted, nationally recognized entry-level fiber credential. And if there is an organization that really is qualified to do that, then this is the Fiber Broadband Association, as we represent, literally hundreds of members throughout the entire fiber ecosystem of the U.S. And in many cases, we represent, the inventors of the technology and the large deployers of technology. So, this is being offered through community colleges, vocational schools, in conjunction with the telecom service provider, looking at different models of getting this out into the industry as quickly as we can. But what really separates it out from some of the training that's out there is it's very focused on fiber-related knowledge base and skill set, also to include values for fiber optic technicians. So when we talk about values, we're certainly talking about the concept of safety and documentation, customer service, craftsmanship. I mean, things that are extremely important to our technicians today, really across across both the wired and the wireless spectrum. So the content has been vetted by the Education Deployment Specialist Committees, and it's designed to lead to a future internship, apprenticeship, or an employment. And then it is approved through the U.S. Department of Labor, and the apprenticeship, we're working through with Tim and his organization, WIA and TIRAP, really to help set the stage for apprenticeships. So Trish, if I can get you to move to the next slide. So just looking at the course in a little bit more depth. Again, what we're trying to do is it's roughly 40% knowledge, 60% skills, with the statement of values sprinkled in. And actually, the values contribution was given to us by SNN, who is a fiber optic installation contractor, and they highlighted to us, we really need to highlight the importance of values and really setting good, declaring good habits and work habits, and how do you really become an effective technician beyond just the technical stuff. But we go into, we start at the very beginning with, just applications and advantages of fiber, some theory, geometry, and a lot of that is relatively dry, but you really have to have that. And then certainly early on, a focus on safety. And then from there, we start heading into a lot of hands-on exercises where we do a lot of, we talk about cables, and then we do a lot of cable stripping. We do some architecture stuff, do a lot of splicing, and then also focus on a lot of repetition. You're focusing on your proper cable management, testing, areas of installation, really all the way through the network. And so it's 144 hours for Department of Labor apprenticeship tracks. For those that are not going to do an apprenticeship, it's roughly in the 110, 120 hour time frame. But want to highlight that we've got these courses now that are beginning to pop up around the country. We successfully piloted earlier this year, and we're now seeing those begin to pop up in areas around the country. And the one thing that we're really looking for, if you're representing a service provider, you are the target customer for this. And what we're looking to do is provide you with a credential that if you see that on somebody's resume, some period of time from now, then you begin to trust that as a credential, because that's something that we have not heard to this point that is available. That we really haven't heard that there is a trusted credential for an entry-level fiber optic technician, and we are looking to do that for our industry. So I think I'm going to go ahead and toss back over to Tim, and then we'll begin to wind down.
Terrific. I think one of the things pointed out in the NOFO is that there is an encouragement of establishing statewide sector partnerships for education and workforce development. I think we're fortunate to have something like this in place. We have a sector partnership in the state of Ohio. And if I could sort of describe the nature of that sector partnership, again, it engages education system, workforce system, government, and industry with what WIA's role in this is to be an industry intermediary. Again, we invested in the creation of curriculum many years ago. So we have a catalog of 40 or more courses. So we're able to establish this partnership and very quickly work with what we might call a hub or a central institution. In Ohio, it's Ohio State University. And so the formal name of it is the Broadband and 5G Sector Partnership that we've established through Ohio Governor's Office of Workforce Transformation. We, together with Ohio State and industry, will be working on the expansion of curriculum. We'll use some of what WIA has already created related to telecom. We'll engage with our friends at PCCA and certainly through this formal partnership, and even informally work with FBA and others to make sure that we have world-class curriculum that prepares people for careers in the broadband industry. So we're excited about that, and I think that experience uniquely qualifies this partnership to assist in the planning, in workforce planning, as states are considering their proposals under BEAD. Next slide.
So Tim, I think I'll go ahead and grab this one. So, just the way that wireless and wired networks, have continued to be complementary. I think we see that on the workforce development side as well. And so we're looking for these two organizations really to become a joint clearinghouse, really for telecom training, for fiber and wireless. And so what we wanted to do, there are a lot of different models that can be done from the employer level out to the statewide level. And we are interested in engaging really with all of the above. I mean, we really want to get trained people out into the workforce as quickly as we possibly can to meet all the demand that's out there. So, really would like to encourage you to, if you'd like to learn more, please contact FBA. That's through Deborah Kish, who's our VP of Workforce and Research, and then Tim at WIA. And Tim, I don't know if you have any other things that you'd like to highlight, but wanted to go ahead and mention that.
No, I think, again, I would just reiterate that I think the partnership strengthens, our ability to respond in a way that NTIA has described and to assist with workforce planning. Ultimately, I think that we're going to solve this skills gap and this ongoing crunch if we're able to get curriculum widespread. So you start at these four-year institutions potentially. You could start at career and technical centers. You could start at two-year institutions. But getting curriculum and inspiring youth, starting in middle school and high school, I think is going to be critical. Mark, I think you said it earlier. It's the recognition of what is available, what career paths are available, isn't widely known, and we hope to work on those things together. We think that BEAD is a once in a lifetime opportunity to do this, and with the requirement of the workforce plan, I think we're uniquely qualified as a group, as a team, to assist.
We have a lot of really good questions. Let's try to slide some of these in before we run out of time. But so one came in that basically said on RFP that they issued, one of the responses came from the Communications Workers of America, which noted that tens of thousands of telecom broadband workers, especially technicians, have been idled by carriers. In consideration, can you comment on whether you think there's really a workforce availability issue, or is there a workforce participation issue?
I can take that, and all that I can tell you is that, and I am very fond of my good friends at CWA. What we hear from employers on and on and on is that they cannot find enough skilled workers to meet the demand. We have some employers, within our industry, and it's not just related to wireless, it's throughout telecom. They tell me they need 2,000 workers yesterday. That's a very real issue. And so, I think we look to engage qualified individuals wherever they are.
And so I think, I agree with you, Tim, as Mark said, we have an aging out issue, a lot of people leaving the industry. We also have young people who don't know about industry that we really need to get fresh people in. So, and then also, from a union perspective, what about 11% of broadband is union, and the other 89%. So, so I think that comment was probably more reflection on the changes in deployment between AT&T and Verizon, not really reflective of the market. Is that, would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I continually hear from both employers and contractors. We have trouble finding people, and then we have trouble keeping people. So and it sounds to me like there's just potentially a locational or geographic disconnect. If there are massive numbers of people available, then actually we got to figure out how to get those dots connected. But we haven't really been hearing that on the ground.
So another question is, where do the employment opportunities break down? Is it mostly hands-on installers, or is there a need for team leads or support engineers? Where should we should be focusing training up?
So I'll tell you that at least our focus right now, from a starting standpoint, is for entry-level outside plant technicians. That's where we have heard the most acute needs. But we know that there are adjacent skills that are needed everywhere. I mean, we hear of shortages of people who really are people who can climb. We hear of shortages of people who are skilled, in directional drilling and boring and trenching and those types as well. So we know that there are complementary skills outside of what we're teaching that are needed as well.
All right, and then kind of the last question is, what do states and what does everybody need to do right now? I mean, we have, as Tim started off with saying, is the, by next July is going to be the allocation of funding, and so then we have to have their workforce development plans in place. So when should states be ramping up their workforce development efforts, and who should they be working with?
Yeah, so I'll start that one, then toss it over to Tim. And I'd say now, absolutely time is now. One of the things that we are trying to figure out, and we are in the process of putting together a workforce development playbook. But one of the issues that we've seen is that we've got the spigot of money that's coming out, and that's to build networks. We don't have that same spigot of money for training, and so we're trying to figure out the pathways to enable some of that money to be allocated a little bit earlier, so we can begin training our workforce before we actually need them to be on site. I think that's a very important item, and I'll toss over to Tim.
No, I think you're right. You nailed it. And I think that's, the purpose of the webinar. The clock is ticking. The time is now. I think we begin the planning. I think there are some models out there. NTIA would point out that there are models out there like Ohio that are working. Start to establish your sector partnerships, engage with apprenticeships and intermediaries. And, again, I think there's no better group to engage with on these things. I think we are so uniquely qualified given the level of investment that has been made in curriculum development and the establishment of registered apprenticeship, and now what is a mature program. Collectively, our group right here on this call can really assist.
Well, Mark and Tim, I really appreciate all your efforts to help drive our workforce development initiatives across our nation. I want to thank everybody for joining and look forward to getting back together next Wednesday. We're actually going to have NTI here next Wednesday. That's going to be talking about NTI's Internet for All initiative and a workforce to connect America with our really good friend, NTI Special Policy Advisor, Lucy Moore, who's going to discuss the recently released NTI Workforce Planning Guide for the states and territories used when planning high-speed internet deployment projects. So you're not going to want to miss that, and we'll see everybody again next Wednesday. Thanks, everyone.